Right, okay. Hello. Welcome to anybody that's listening and watching us. So my name is Paul Green from the business community. We're doing a little business bulletin today. I'm joined by Jo Thurman from Personal Career Management. And what we're going to take a little look at is what the options are. If anybody out there is facing redundancy, has been made redundant, then Jo's going to share her expertise. You can, if you're on this session, you can put comments on the social media platforms and we'll see those. And you can comment on StreamYard if you're tuned in on that platform as well. So, Jo, why don't you introduce yourself and let the world know who you are?
Okay, so yeah, Jo Thurman, and the company I work with is Personal Career Management. So we're an independently owned career coaching business, and we've been working with people through career change, proactive strategic career change, and supporting through redundancy for about the last 18 years. And I've been doing this work for about 30.
Okay, well, let's see if we can extract some of that 30 years experience then and help any of our viewers and listeners. So if someone's worried about redundancy or they've already been made redundant, what do they do? What's the next step?
Okay, so the first thing I think you want to be spending a bit of time doing is making sure that you've gathered your information and the process is being managed properly for you. So you're not supposed to be the expert in this. There's free resources that you can go to. You can go to ACAS, you can go to Citizens Advice, and you can go to the UK Gov website. Search any of those for advice on being in a redundancy process, and they will give you the information you need to make sure that your employer is going through the right process and you're being treated fairly. You can also go back to your employer and not necessarily accept their first offer for what they're going to put on the table for you. See if you can negotiate, see if there's anything you can do about reducing your hours, for example, or trying to see if you can get a different package out of them. You can also see if they will help you with giving you any outplacement support. They may not. There's all sorts of businesses out there and they offer a whole range of different services. And there's some really effective and low cost services that won't frighten your employer in terms of costs, but could be very helpful to you. If they can't do that, you can access the same support individually, privately. And you can also get your employer to help you out by processing any invoice, any VAT invoice out of your final settlement and save yourself the VAT. So I think the start point is gather your information, get your rights, understand what's happening, and be clear on that process. The other thing that's super, super important is to look after yourself. Going into a job search at any time requires you to be positive, motivated, high energy and confident. And when you weren't the person who decided that this was the time to go into the market, your confidence can take a little bit of a knock. So really important when you're setting out on a job search post-redundancy is to put pretty much as much time into looking after yourself as into job search. There can be a tendency to go out with a bit of adrenaline and think, I've got to be on the system, I've got to be looking at jobs constantly, I've got to be out there. You do need to take action for sure, but you also do need to look after yourself. And that could be keeping connected. If you're going to be working on your job search on your own at home, how do you still get human contact? It can feel like very much one-way traffic going out to job boards and the internet. That doesn't talk back at you, doesn't give you any feedback, doesn't give you a break. So we would always say, take chunks of time, good focused chunks of time on your job search, but please don't think that is the thing you need to be doing 10 hours a day, every day. You need to be looking after yourself, because the more motivated and positive and confident and refreshed you are, the better the outcome will be. So 2 things: practically gather up your information. Second thing, think about how you're going to look after yourself and who's going to be your support.
And I guess building on that, people are likely to feel quite anxious about it, possibly angry. Is there anything specifically that people can do to deal with that and sort of get themselves into, better shape?
Recognizing that all of those emotions are valid and expected and normal, I think, is a really good start point. Even though you might have thought this was coming, you can still feel quite shocked that it's actually happened. And that can throw you into a bit of denial. There's actually really good research that shows, it's called the job loss curve, and the roller coaster of emotions is just like a bereavement. It's like you've lost something. You've lost a part of your structure, your income, your professional identity. And you can see people going through this shock and denial, but absolutely veering into frustration and anger. How dare they? How dare they let my job go? How dare they do that to me? And so what's really important is to not get stuck in that bit of the emotion, because that can become low mood. And low mood is not where you want to be when you're going out into the job market. So one really important tactic, depersonalize it. Okay, there isn't a stigma to redundancy, particularly in 2020. You're not alone. This is not about you or your competence or your capability or your value as an employee. This is a tough economic decision that the business has been made to make in light of the situation that we are in. So that's dead easy for me to say, but the sooner you get through that sort of irritation and frustration and denial and low mood and start looking forward and thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? Right, what am I going to do with this situation? And then you can start taking some action. Then you can start experimenting, maybe talking to some people, maybe putting some applications out there. And then you can start, facing your new world. Again, when you go out into the job market, what employers are looking for is the person who's on their game, knows their stuff, is confident, positive, motivated. What they don't want to pick up and hear is somebody who's perhaps looking backwards, feeling a bit aggrieved, a bit frustrated. They're going to ask you, why you left, why are you looking? And that's just simple. My role was made redundant. I was one of X, a department of 10. All of us, our roles were made redundant in response to COVID. Depersonalize, take the emotion out. So yeah, and I've made that sound like it's dead smooth, right? You start off in denial, you get a bit angry, and then you can go through all of those emotions in a morning. Right, and then think, oh, I'm quite on this, and then straight back into feeling rubbish because you might get turned down for a job because you're not going to get every job you go for. So I'm just thinking, think about your opportunities to get other people helping you, get some support, get venting situations and venting opportunities, but start to look forward, take action, and move yourself through that.
Okay, great advice. So there's some people whose industries have been affected more than others due to the current pandemic. How do they, what steps do they take? How do they begin to think about changing? Because maybe the opportunities don't exist within their indigenous industry, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. It's in weird territory, actually, because some industries are absolutely thriving and trying to hire, and some industries have really, really been hit hard by COVID, and they may not recover quickly. It may take some time. So people might have to think more broadly about where their employment choices are, at least in the short term. So I think the thing the start point is you are not defined by your current job title or your most recent company or most recent industry. So you are, you are the summary, the collective of everything you've ever done. All the places you've ever worked, all the jobs you've had, all the companies and industries that you've been in. So your starting point is to start and look at all of that and try and get a handle on what do you have to offer. So you are thinking about, what am I good at? Now, you might work in hospitality, right? But you've got lots of knowledge of hospitality, but that's not the thing that you're good at. What you're good at is a skill you take to hospitality, or a personal quality or attitude you take to hospitality and the way you do your job, not what you know. So when you start to think about what do I have to offer, yes, you've got knowledge of industries and maybe, I don't know, pieces of software. Yes, you've got qualifications and training, but you've also got to look for what we call transferable skills. And transferable skills are in demand in lots of places. So it could be, let's say, team working, right? So it doesn't have to be reliant on hospitality. So you've got to start to dig into the things you know you're good at, then start to find the evidence. So the evidence is what we call stories. What are the stories that you can share with somebody that prove you're good at that? And then you can start thinking, who needs that? You know, what other ideas do I have? Other industries that also need good team workers, that also need people who've got, I don't know, let's say great analytical skills. So look broadly at everything you've got. You can even go to non-work. Yeah, you might have done some really interesting stuff in the community and volunteering that could help a future employer see you in a different light to the way your traditional CV says you've been employed in the past. So I think it's thinking broadly. It's thinking about downloading everything that you know that you're good at, and of course, we're not necessarily at the best at recognizing what we're good at ourselves. So ask people who know you. You know, what do you see me do in the workplace? You work with me. What have I done well? And they will often find the stuff that you do so naturally and so well and so intuitively, you don't even realize you're good at it.
Mm.
So pull in stuff from other people. And then you might have some ideas. Okay. And then once you've got some ideas, you can start researching the market, because you don't know what this job's about. It's not the job you've had. So you don't want to go at it blind. You want to do some really good quality research. So can you find a way of being introduced to somebody who does the job that you're thinking of doing or works in the industry you're thinking of exploring? So you may not know them, but the people you know may be able to introduce you. So when you go and talk to somebody who's in the space that you're researching, it's never about them telling you whether you could do it or you should do it. They don't know you, and they haven't got time to get to know you. You're trying to hear about their experience. So you're just like a sponge. You know, tell me what you do. What's your job like? What do you need to be good at? How do you get in? What qualifications do you need? You'll absorb. And then you can start to build a picture. How close are you? Where are the gaps? Yeah. Is this going to be a single step move, or do I have to take this in stages? Yeah. So could I do one step and then get some experience to get to where I want to be? Do I need to do some training? So, you know, we work with people who have changed career fundamentally at all stages, and it's genuinely, it's never too late. We've worked with people in their late 50s who are setting out on a brand new career for the first time. So don't think whatever you've done before is limiting what you can do in the future.
Okay.
That's a long answer. I got excited about that.
That's fine. That's good to get excited. I guess, you know, the if you can see through the anxiety and, you know, the fear, then I guess it can be exciting, because, you know, it could be a career change for you. So given that it's more than likely going to be a shock to a number of people, they probably won't have a current CV, you know, maybe haven't done one in years. So where do they start there? I know you've touched on some of the research that they can do, and I guess that would contribute to the CV, but where do they start?
Okay. First thing in terms of taking action and taking control post redundancy is starting to think, what do I need and want out of this next move? So even just sitting with pen and paper and starting to write down some practicalities of what's important to you out of this move, it starts to put you in the driving seat and you in a bit more control. Very often the first knee-jerk reaction is, oh my God, I need a CV. And you do, of course you need a CV. Even, you know, in days where LinkedIn is seriously important, you also need a CV too, because people rely on the CV often as a first port of call. But don't start with trying to just add your most recent job to whatever you've had in the past, because what you want to do is think about who's my reader, right? Who's going to read this, and what do I want them to understand about me? Because you may not be going for exactly the same. You may be shifting industry, in which case the language on your CV might have to be subtly different to appeal to the industry that you're going to. Now that might be, as simple as saying, you say ball bearings on your CV now, you say engineering manufacturing on your CV in future, because it's not a ball bearing company you're going to, but it's a business that is, in highly engineered products. So you want them to understand that you are quite close. Yeah, not exactly the same, but quite close. So the first thing is, what do I have? What do I want? What do I need? What do I have to offer? Then you look at your CV, and remember, it is absolutely not an autobiography. It's not everything, right? It's a snapshot that makes somebody want to talk to you. That's its job, to start, get you, I was going to say in the room, we don't do in the room, to get you on a Zoom call to have an interview. And all the stuff that you've got on the CV, the interviewer knows there's acres behind it, and they want to hear more about the acres, but they don't want the acres on the CV first, because that's going to get in the way. Too much noise, too many words, and you possibly won't get the chance. So 2 pages is what we're aiming for. And some people, when we're working with people, that can feel really emotional, right? Because it's like you're letting go of loads of your history. It's like, oh, but I like pages 4, 5, and 6. You're not keeping them, right? We can get the same information across in 2 pages. You don't need to tell people what you were doing in, 1992, if it wasn't relevant to what you spent the last 10 years doing, which is much more relevant. So key thing, you won't have one version of your CV. You'll tweak it depending upon who you're sending it to. And it needs to be relevant to your reader. So you are looking at what they're asking for and showing how you match.
Okay. So you mentioned we're in the Zoom world. This is probably an obvious question, but probably worth putting out there. Because what I've noticed is people tend to dress a little bit more casually now. They're just in their home and on a Zoom call, but presumably you should dress as you would go into an interview. Is that correct, or what would you say on?
Yeah, and I would dress as I was going to an interview, top and bottom. Yeah, because the worst thing in the world, this looks great, and then something happens, the door goes, and you stand up and you've got your pajama bottoms on. Yeah.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah. Could rather spoil the whole show. So I think the other reason for dressing up is it's you putting yourself in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, if I was going to turn up at this company and I was going to drive there or get the bus there or whatever, I'd put my smart clothes on, and I'd get myself into, right, I'm in sales mode now, I've got to promote myself. Just because this is the way we're doing it, you've got to do everything you can to get your head into, I'm about to help them understand they should be hiring me. And that goes for this stuff, like what's going on behind you. You can use those fake backgrounds on Zoom if what's behind you isn't, necessarily perfect, because it could be you're having to be interviewed in a shared space, right? And you haven't got somewhere private, perfectly private, that you can clear out and keep, make really anonymous as such. The only things I'm not sure about those backgrounds is when you move, it looks a bit weird.
Yeah, it can do. Yeah.
A bit odd when you're moving. But test your connection, have a dummy run with somebody, get them to make sure your mic's working and your video's working. Think about what's behind you. Think about what you're wearing, top and bottom. Oh, excuse me. Have some water ready, so when you do that, you've got a drink. You have to rush out. But yeah, lots of people are being interviewed very successfully over Zoom and getting job offers and even starting jobs and getting onboarded and meeting teams and everything.
Okay. So there may be an awkward question. You've been made redundant, you're going for the interview, and the question is, why did you leave? How would someone sort of like handle that type of question?
Confidently, non-apologetically. My role has been made redundant as a result of COVID. Okay, even better if you can say, I was one of 30, or I was one of 2, I was one of 6. Or the team was taken out. The business can no longer support this function. because that depersonalizes it, and it just shuts the conversation down and moves it on to talk about the things that you want to talk about, which is why you're going to be a great hire for them.
Okay, so a few comments. So great advice, Jo, from Roger. And also, not sure whether Russell has any stripy shirts, but he's saying sometimes that can be a little bit difficult on camera. So I guess you do need to think, you know, we're not presenters like on TV, but I guess I think sometimes with maybe the checks and the crossed, just check shirts and things like that sometimes might be a bit blurry on camera, or do the eyes of the beholder in. I'll just put it out there just in case anybody is tuning in, if they've got any questions for Jo. I think the one final one I've got is, where can people go for help? I know you touched on that at the beginning, but do you want to just sort of remind people where they can get help from if they've been made redundant, or they're facing that as a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I say there's lots of free resources out there. There's that you can go to. There's some fantastic resources for if you've got time to look to upskill. You know, so if you think there's a gap between you and what you want to do, go on things like Open University, Future Learn, and the government website. And if there's a technical skills gap, a digital skills gap, there's some fantastic resources to take an opportunity to, you know, to raise your game. The other thing I think about help is find people within your friends and family who you can go to, who are going to be your pickup person if things get a little bit tough, because, you know, it will be a roller coaster. But in our experience, people are getting jobs all the time, right? We're getting good news stories from clients and people in the workplace all the time. The BizCom community have got this redundancy support. And they've put a lot of really good material together that you can access through Paul's BizCom website as well. So, you know, don't feel it's all doom and gloom. Keep positive, be confident, and you know, there is really good news stories out there.
Okay, I've just posted the link up there. So what we're doing is we're collating some of the data, some of the information that was shared on this call on that website that's going across your screen now, buzzcom.co.uk/employee, and we'll continue to update that as things change, and put some useful and guiding information on there. So
we as personal career management have put that's on there as well, a series of 8 free to watch videos on our YouTube channel, Personal Career Management, dealing with redundancy, video interviewing, CVs, networking, using LinkedIn. We did those over the course of the summer, and they're all there if that's a helpful point as well.
Okay, so anybody that's listening to this on replay or anything like that, please do free to put your questions in the comments on whatever platform you're on, and you know, we'll endeavour to get back to you and answer those questions. But you know, do visit the site. How do people get in touch with you, Jo, if they want to get in touch with you? What's the best way to connect with you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also send me an email, and my email address is my name, Jo Thurman, @personalcareermanagement.com.
Okay, right. There's no questions, but a few comments, positive comments popping up on my screen. So I think we'll call it a day there. So thanks ever so much, Jo. For anybody else listening, you know, we will put this together and share it online, so it's available. If you want to share it with other people that you know that would find this useful, then please do that. So we'd like to get this out to as many people as possible and help them out in what a troubled time. So I'll end the broadcast there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.